y'all, this is Justin from Afrouae UAE. Wanted to introduce episode number 3, parts 1 and 2. We were recently in Union Theological Seminary in New York City. I was invited to be a panelist in a class called Prophetic Pastoral Theology in the City, taught by Dr. Samuel Cruz and assisted by Felipe Luciano. We talked about a wide range of things having to do with prophetic leadership. Hope you enjoy it.
We have 3 distinguished guests here this evening that were invited by Felipe, and we're glad to have all 3 of you here. Hour and 45 minutes. We'll turn it over to the 3 of you and we'll be able to ask questions from them. Then after that, we'll take a break, and I want to go over the reflection papers for today from your readings that were quite interesting. So I'll let Felipe introduce our guest.
This is going to sound ethereal, and this is going to sound mystical. But God has made it clear to me, get ready. It's going to get worse. Get ready with the word, get ready with the action, get ready with spirit. Internally, do not depend always on collective action. You got to know what you got to do. Just in case your own pull the okie doke on you and say what you're doing is not what you should be doing. To that end, and I'm going to introduce him right now, I'd like to read you something from Cornel West's Black Prophetic Fire. This sense of giving up one's life is the ultimate cause, but there's also a penultimate cause in the life you live before you die. And that, to me, is just as important a question, you know? How do you use your time and your energy? And the time and energy that you have available to you before death puts an end to the whole thing. And there again, you got this creative tension between truth and power and a commitment to telling the truth, bearing witness to the truth, and yet easily being marginalized versus trying to gain access to political power, economic power, cultural power, and oftentimes easily being absorbed and incorporated. And how do you deal with that to and fro, moving back and forth? God has told me, stop hanging out with pigeons, start dealing with eagles. Start dealing with people who are down. I'm going to read this poem, and then I'm going to introduce them. This is my prophecy. This is the way I look at it. This is called Watch. Always imitated. Be we dormant preachers, suburbanites, or preachers, we imitate those who imitate us, who want our hair, our skin, our sex, our dysfunction. They're walking like us now, speaking in our accents and cadences, lying in sun booths, crinkling their skin, and buying curling irons to make nappiness and braids fashionable. They ride in limos with blackened windows to see how we dress these days, snap pictures of clothing we're ashamed to wear to work so they can sell it to young, hip, urban professionals who will wear it proudly in the office and sue the motherfucker who dares criticize their personal ethics and dress code. We, the dark ones, the brown ones, the red and yellow ones, the purple people have made music, hip, language, slick song and dance and spirit compelling, yet haven't stood still long enough to thank God for our beauty, our substance, our ability to attract the world to our style. You think we can believe in ourselves? The way we believe in our fucking shoes? In the way we wear our hats? In the rituals of our complicated handshakes and embraces? Think we can love our kids the way we love our rhythm and invest in our dreams the way we invest in our churches and medications? They keep on hitting us hard and we keep flowing and thriving and moving upstream like salmon against the current. Everybody wants to come to Harlem. Everybody wants to know how to mambo, and those of us who live there, been there, and done that, never take pride in the mere fact that simply being who we are is magnificent. But the day is coming when those who are imitating the imitation will go to the next step of mutation and become truly Americanized. Then those who started this madness, this system of separation, will beg for the Holy Ghost, will become black in spirit, and ask the Creator to please make colored people African and compassionate again. Because by then, black and brown street corner men and women will have become white in attitude, Caucasian in behavior, European in spirit, and start to kill anything and everything they fear or desire. Whites will shake, tremble, prophesy, and speak in tongues, hoping Jesus will save them from the dark ones from the dark side. And they will remember their sins, their broken promises, their legacy of pain, of humiliation, of making people feel and act ugly. and black men and women in high office who may feel pity and a little ashamed and offer a brief lull in this war of terror in order to give their former oppressors a false sense of security as long as whites buy black products maybe, and eat red beans maybe, and speak Chinese, and say yes to Puerto Rican land claims and Lakota Sioux beliefs. But the last shall be first. It is already written. It is already happening. Watch. It's just a matter of time. Last brother here, I met him in Newark when we were both working there. His name is David Jefferson. Comes from a strong family, Baptist preacher. His father runs the Metropolitan Baptist Church there, if you know anything about Newark. I met him when he was doing My Brother's Keeper. He was so strong, they got scared of him. They got scared of him. And I remember I was talking in the hallway of City Hall. He said, they're going to try to move deep. And these are our folk. This guy, he just graduated from Princeton, is he, Papa?
Yes, sir.
He's a bad boy preacher. This is Axia Rodriguez. I went to Fordham University and I sat there. Somebody had told me, you gotta come. And it turns out that someone who told me is from Chicago. How the hell this happens, I don't know. Chicago told me you gotta go to the Italian section of the Bronx to see her. So I'm sitting there listening, and this sister's going like this. Smacking the shit. I said, whoa! So she's here. After she spoke, Justin Williams spoke. And he sat like this. You ever seen my brother just... Yeah, he stayed like this. I said, I hope he ain't want to take us off or anything, because he was just like that. He stayed. This is Dr. Melissa Castillo, Harvard University. And so Justin smacked the hell out of people. And they stood there like this. By the way, all of these people, with the exception of my brother, this is the brother from another mother. All of these people were in the same group. Now, she got up, and you know, I don't know if y'all know Puerto Rican male, but she got up and I went, bye y'all. I said, damn. But let me tell you something, when she started speaking, it was through. It was through. I mean, you had to go like this. Because she has a whole theory of the Puerto Rican, of the Latino art scene that goes beyond the superficial. These are the prophetic warriors. These are the visionaries for the future. We'll start. David, you want to hit it off?
Sure, I don't mind.
Go ahead.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Great. Thank you for having me, Professor. Thank you for allowing us to share at this time. It will be helpful before I begin. I'd like to know who I'm speaking with. Could everyone just give me their name and a little bit about themselves?
Your old ex-con.
Okay.
My name's Adam. I just started a PhD here in Prophetic theology.
Ryan Hill, I'm a first year MDiv student.
Okay.
Joe Talbert, third year MDiv student from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Cassius Rudolph, third year MDiv from Chicago.
Isabel Garcia Spiegel, I'm from Union
From where?
Theological Seminary.
From where?
Union. Yes.
Danielle Williams, first year MDiv from Sacramento, California.
Okay, Danielle.
Jermaine Ford, first year MDiv, Jersey.
My name is Naya Toussaint. I'm an MA student and an international affairs student, and I'm from Jersey.
Okay. Well, it's a pleasure. I'm David Jefferson, and recently graduated with my master's in divinity from Princeton. I also have an honorary doctorate from the LA Bible Institute. I was the Kenyon J. Wildrick award winner in homiletics this year from Princeton as well. So my background, I'm a third generation Baptist preacher, just to set the tone for you. In addition, I'm a consultant. My background started out in film and television. I was an actor in a film called Remember the Titans was one of the first films that I was in as an actor. So my background shifted from film, television, and radio into what I think is a good transition here, my calling to ministry. And when we talk about calling, I think it's important to touch on why we're doing what we're doing. So this course is about prophetic, if you will, engagement, right? Looking at prophecy and looking at what the prophetic means in a new way. And so for me, My calling to serve was one, and I think we all are unique to our own calling and what a calling is and what it means to be called out, to act on what you believe is a divine voice that is using you as a vessel to make things happen and to change things. And so what I noticed with my calling, with my prophetic, if you will, engagement with the divine, was that other things in my life were not flowing to a smooth and even flow degree. And it's interesting, we were talking about this with Professor earlier. I was in the entertainment business, and I was working with a number of individuals, you can name them, and I could sit across from them, but there was something that was missing and things weren't working right. If we look at the biblical model, we can think about Jonah. Jonah has a calling from God that he is to deliver a message, right? And he takes it upon himself to say, I'm not going to Nineveh, I'm going to avoid this calling that the divine may be giving me to share with others, for whatever reason that may be. As a result, he puts other lives in danger. He's on a what? A vessel. We know the story. Do we know the Bible story a little bit about Jonah? So he's on the vessel, and the storm is coming about, and everyone's saying, why is this storm happening? And he's in the belly of the ship, and then he realizes this is happening because of me. And so when you get that prophetic calling, that if you don't respond because it could endanger others, and that's really where I got to a point in my life where my calling, so I've been a youth pastor for 10 years in Newark, New Jersey. I've had to commingle my calling with governmental affairs, entertainment, art, politics. I mean, however you want to, kind of look at it, there's a thread here. And so I'm going to pass it on because I know I have other individuals, but to set the tone of who I am when we get back to me, I received my prophetic calling, and I'm still working through it and understanding what it really means, right? It's a constant journey. But through that journey, I had to recognize that what I wanted to achieve, which, was fame. I wanted to be known through acting and filmmaking. I wanted to have my name and lights, and, I don't know if you guys know this, but in the filmmaking world, there's something called top billing, right? Top billing is, when you look at the credits and they run, there's a name that's at the top of that list. That name is getting the largest amount of recognition, the biggest paycheck. Everyone knows that name. But when you go further, if you've noticed, a lot of people don't do this in the movie theaters. We kind of cut out on the credits, right? We don't have to stick around for the credits. Who cares about the credits? Because if you notice, in film, they put the names of important individuals even in front of the film, right? You'll see the star's name, but you won't see the gaffer. You won't see the audio director. You won't see key names that you'll recognize, but without that total tandem, we don't have a cast working together, but we know that one name. And so in this calling, there's a lot of names that we know, but we don't know what happened behind the prophetic calling. And so I want to flesh out a little bit more today, when we speak, and it comes back to me about this radical calling on God, on men and women that we see who have been called prophet and prophetesses, and what they had to endure and what they had to give up. So in a contemporary setting, we see a lot of ministers who are flourishing, doing well. We hear about private jets. We see big congregations, 10,000, like you were saying that number. You hit 10,000, you hit 5,000, you've achieved greatness. From what is the human eye. But then we forget about the radical component of these individuals. So the radical king, the king who died penniless, who didn't have a dime to bequeath to his family, because when the blood shed from his neck on the Lorraine Motel balcony, there was nothing that could equate to what he had given and what he had stored up, because he was out to help others. We forget about Malcolm X at an Audubon ballroom, who was shot up, and still to this day no one wants to come clean with who really assassinated him, in a sense, and looking at his family and how his family if you will, through time went through a disintegration because there was no financial legacy that was left, but we still have the legacy of his words that kind of hold us and move us forward. What does true prophecy really look like? What does prophetic voices really look like? And I think there's been a compromise in this day and age where we would rather be on fleek and be lit and be popping than to really understand what that sacrifice of radical prophetic voice really means. And so I'm excited to be here, and that's what I want to talk to you all today.
Thank you, and I'm glad it was substantive and it's right to the point. I would hope that all the panelists do that because they have to ask you questions.
Okay.
I don't even know what paya means, but I don't want to know.
Vaya.
Oh, vaya.
Okay. Jonathan Soto is one of the top young minister, theologian, scholars in the city. Quiet, humble, but when he speaks, you say, oh, stuff. He works for the mayor now. The mayor put him in charge of the interfaith, which means the mayor got a little smarts. He ain't that smart, but he got enough smarts to know that the spirit world and the clergy is serious, and they have a sphere of influence, and you need somebody who knows what they're doing. And I'm glad he picked a Puerto Rican for that, because sometimes we get caught up. Michael's with you too, right? Michael's with you too? Yeah. This boy is sharp. You'll see him. This sister is an educator. I wish I had her as my teacher when I was going to school, because I think I would have probably been able to temper some of the madness in me. Aisha.
Hi, Axia Rodriguez, Bronx Educators United for Justice. I'm an ESL teacher by training. Started all of this craziness of becoming a teacher by accident or by fate, however it looks like. Started off in Japan, came back and became a teacher through many different blessings, including my master's for free. So I do believe that there's purpose for that. So my teaching will always intersect with poverty. My teaching will always intersect with immigration. My teaching will always intersect with issues of identity and race and the politics that is involved in all of that. So my students will always come to me with trauma. My students will always come to me with stories. And my students will always come to me with a burden that others do not have. And the past, I guess some people go back 20 years, but obviously I haven't been teaching that long. So over my career, I've been in the DOE for like 12 years. Over time, I've started to notice what has been happening to the children. Some by conservative forces and many by neoliberal forces, where who they are is being controlled and shaped through various means. One of them is a serious effort to ration what these children get access to. And lots of justification from people who want to profit, to profit off of public education and push it towards privatization. So I became, by pure accident, out of my ignorance and believing that everybody had the best intentions, I became an educational activist when I first sued a charter school. And after 3 years of going through hell with that, I eventually just settled. But it woke me up to what was really happening with the small schools movement. And once my little 20-something-year-old eyes could open up and see that they were justifying rationing the education these children would receive, claiming that small schools were better for them, but not defining who the them were, cutting out entire pieces of their education, and saying, well, they were so violent and they were failing those schools anyway. They really don't need art, music, dance, electives, ethnic studies, anything that remotely would care for their person, their character, their soul, and their spirit. And so I became more and more active, and I met a lot of people who were tremendously influential with me opening my eyes. And some of them may be superintendents, like Michael Hines, who wants to stop talking about tests and start talking about physical growth, emotional growth, academic growth. Is also part of social growth, all those different things, and seeing the whole child. This whole child movement is super important. Another person that is motivating me, or two principles are motivating me to talk about the whole child, which includes feeding the spirit of these children. Jamal Bowman, principal of Casa Middle School in the Bronx. Louis E. Torres, principal of CS 55. And if you look up these gentlemen, these three that I'm going to highlight right there, you will see that they have gone beyond just being an educator and have really become influential in how they grow food in like school farms. They have the Bronx Green Machine. Louis Torres started putting little free libraries all over his neighborhood in the Bronx. Jamal Bowman has been active in getting, music involved with the kids, and the way that he leads as a father, he really looks at these children as the father. He sees them completely as a whole person. And having come to my own realization that they were using stereotypes of violence of black and brown children to justify punishing them by denying them a whole education, punishing their schools by labeling them, punishing the teachers who wanted to teach in those communities by saying, you're a failing teacher, your school is failing, your neighborhood is failing, you're shit, your kids are shit, you're never going to be shit, so we're going to give you shit, and we're going to treat you like shit, but we're going to wrap it up in the present, and we're going to say we're making a renewal school. We're going to wrap it up in the present, we're going to chop up a big building, and gone will be your science lab like rooms, gone will be your dance room, whatever. We will divide it up. So within the same building, you will have intra-building segregation, where the theme of the school will lead it to end up having in one building, the black school, the immigrant school with Africans and Latinos mixed up, the Latino and whatever leftover school, right? And then you'll see whatever theme that will kind of chop it up, right? Instead of having everybody mixed together. I started to see all of this when my eyes woke up. And I really do believe that there's an element of a plan. Now, it goes really deep. There's a lot of people who've been looking into it. And there is a blogger, her name is Allison, and she runs Wrench in the Gears. And she's talking about all of this push for digital education and what it really means to prepare these kids for a gig economy, so they won't have a pension, so they won't have a career, so they won't have any personal skills, because everything's going to be delivered on an iPad. And all of the people who smile at you, your liberal white friends in a lot of these organizations, are investing in these social dividend bond thingies and promoting it. And a lot of them are the friendly faces that we consider our allies, but in one way, shape, or form have supported a structure to privatize. Charters were the first wave. They've been able to destabilize public education. Teach for America, Teaching Fellows, all of these McTeacher programs have been able to destabilize the middle class, veteran teachers, and have resulted in almost entire schools run by white outside teachers who weren't from New York, who are in their 20s. I can point out a bunch of the Bronx, entirely run by people under 30. So I'm here to say that I'm an ATR. I am an absent teacher reserve teacher. But I'm also highly effective. Isn't that interesting? I don't match what the New York Post says, but I am a union activist. I did decide to do what I was told and help fix these schools. I risked my career going to a renewal school. And when the lies came out and it didn't get 3 years like it was said, it was closed, and I became an ATR. So there's a plan afoot to really set these kids up for failure. And then smile, as the new condos are being built in the South Bronx, they've closed a whole bunch of those schools in the South Bronx, so that when they reopen as charters, they will have a clean slate and attach to that new real estate as having good schools. So there's something called edu-gentrification. What they do to the schools has an intent beyond that. Edu-gentrification, education gentrification. If you disrupt and you destabilize the educational system by sending parents letters saying this school is failing, you can move your kid. What happens is the parents who have kids who are high achieving are usually the parents who read letters. Most of the parents who are not, who have 3 jobs, don't read letters, don't pick up phone calls. They won't hear that. So who gets left in those schools that are so-called failing? The most challenging children. And so teachers like me, who want to be in the South Bronx, because that's where my whole family is, don't mind it and don't care, and I'm not going, oh my God, like some people do. We get the hardest to educate all in one place. Then with a countdown clock over our head, like the sword of Damocles, you're gonna close this school. Now, that's a plan. There is a plan. 144 schools were listed by the commissioner of the state, Mary Ellen Elia, in 2015, that were so-called failing, that would be taken over by the state, 144. And these would be the receivership schools, okay? Out of those 144, 62 were in New York City proper. Out of those 62, 32 were in the Bronx alone. Why is that an amazing thing to me? It's not really amazing because it connects to the whole idea of gentrification. What's the hottest real estate market in New York City? If you close these schools, clean the slate, fix the parks, perfect place for your new condos. Why is this? Should this be shocking? One of the poorest cities in New York State, Buffalo, only had 25 schools on that list. So if you have an entire city that's poor with 25 failing schools, you have only one borough, 32 schools. It should tell you who is failing. Is it the kids in those schools? Is it the teachers in those schools? It's by design. Because that to me is the Bronx on fire all over again. Because if an entire city has less failing schools than just one borough of New York City, they have a target on the Bronx. Which is why with Dr. Mark Mason at Fordham University, we founded the Bronx Educators United for Justice so that we could focus on Bronx schools, and particularly all the adult issues that are trapping the children and stealing the opportunity for their spirit to grow, for their character to grow, for their everything to grow, so they can just get the basics, because that's all those kids are worth.
When and what has God put in your heart to become a soldier? Dr. Cruz has the luxury of teaching. I'm an advocate. You know what I'm saying? I'm recruiting. And you're going to need to understand what it is. If you notice, by the way, and I'm not going to take you long, you see blacks and Latinos here. There is no fucking division. There can be none. And if y'all don't have Latinos in your lives, pick them up. If you don't have white people in your life, pick them up. Cat Williams said you need white people in your life. Cat Williams says that all day. Have you heard
You're
him?
going a little too far now.
Okay, sure. Pick them up. You got to know what other cultures are about. You got to know other folks. If you don't know other cultures, you got a problem. Yeah. He always does this. Don't worry about it. Okay. Justin, another soldier.
Justin. Good evening, everyone. Now imagine if this sister right here, and I met on Facebook, and we are educators. I'm in my 18th year teaching 6th through 12. I'm now teaching 8th grade humanities in Queens United 289. It's my first year teaching in New York City. All of my years, except one, have been in Nassau and Suffolk County, Long Island, where I grew up. Once I moved to this country, I'm an immigrant. But before I go on with that, much of what she said, imagine it being a spoon, right? So now, Neo walks into the room, he's about to talk to the Oracle. Remember that scene in The Matrix? And this little child, the bald-headed child, is bending spoons. So Neo sits down with him, and the child says, "Don't try to bend the spoon, that's impossible. Try to realize the truth. There is no spoon." Now, one of my other favorite quotes is, "Control is our largest illusion." Now, I've widened my gaze, I've panned my gaze back further than the issues that can consume us as public school educators. So So there in the corner is my boy Mike, and we have started a media platform called Afrouae. Afrouae. That's why he's recording. This is going to be a podcast. So we're creating our own media platform. We went and covered the Common Catholic rally a couple of weeks ago in front of NFL headquarters. We did a 1-hour documentary on that. I'm a former Penn State football player. I'm British by birth. My parents are Trinidadian and Jamaican. So I'm a third culture kid, if you've read that book or familiar with that book. I just came back from a year teaching in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So I lived there for a year. Nobody could tell me about Muslim culture. I was curious. I went and took my wife and my 2 younger children and lived there for a year. We're going to stay longer. Trumpets are like they real life is coming. Okay? But it was a great experience. Got to go to Kuwait and deliver a lecture in Kuwait. Got to touch the pyramids in Egypt. It's a dream of mine. Fulfilled. There is no swimming. After that experience, I said, you know what, I was tenured in Uniondale School District where I taught Michael. I was tenured, when I left to go to the Middle East, I resigned because I knew when I came back I was not going back to Uniondale. They're not doing anything special teaching the Chapter and Camel kids in that town, in Nassau County. They're doing nothing special. And they're being run by Chapter and Camel people. They're doing nothing special. It's one thing for it to occur in cities across the country. It's another thing when you have a borough, a suburban city, town, that has no financial issues whatsoever. They can do whatever they want, and they're still fucking up. And are corrupt. And these are people who look like me. I had to go. So now I'm helping to turn around this school teaching 8th graders, and they are listening. Because they've never had a teacher like me before. And that's how I fight. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm just trying to impact my immediate location. Don't try to change the world. That is impossible. Try to change your immediate location. That's very possible. And by so doing, we change the world. What motivates me is I just saw an article that said by the year 2100, we will be at the beginning of a mass extinction. There's serious evidence to suggest that it's already occurring. It's already started, a mass extinction. Never in the previous 10 million years, no, in the entire history of our planet, we've never had carbon levels like we have now in the atmosphere and in the sea. And in the sea. What we are seeing in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean, these Category 5 hurricanes coming one after the other, either it's an historical anomaly, and I'm in dissertation phase, so I'm a researcher. Either it's an historical anomaly, which it could be, or we are seeing the results of capitalism run amok, going back to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution to now. What motivates me is capitalism is the enemy. And layered on top of that is religion, classism, racism, and all that other stuff. But the monkey in the room is capitalism. Research the Venus Project. It pushes a future where every man, woman, and child on Earth leads a high-quality existence where there is no money. We just give each other a quality existence. We don't allow capitalism to choose haves and have-nots. We create a world where every man, woman, and child can live a quality existence. That's what motivates me. I have a 17-year-old, I have a 12-year-old, I have a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, and I have a 3-year-old. They're going to live past 2100. And I'm highly concerned for my children, my blood children, and I've devoted my life to other people's children. That's how I fight. There is no spoon
control is our largest delusion.
Very much. Soldiers and educators, educators and soldiers.
Next one is Dr. Melissa Castillo.
There you go.
She has a whole premise about the Latino aesthetic and what it does to motivate or to demotivate. Amir Baraka said in 1964 that there's a black aesthetic. You hear music differently. You see images differently. It took people a long time to understand that when you listen to Coltrane, you are not listening it to the same way somebody else is listening to it. When you listen to Miles, I don't care what they say. When I listen to Aretha, it's over, it's through. There's nothing else to say. People love it because of the variety of her voice. Aretha is the bomb. And I'm talking about all of them. Christina, Rihanna, whatever. She is the one. So there is a Latino aesthetic. It says this is beautiful and this is not. Miss Castillo.
Hi, so my name is Melissa. I am teaching at Harvard. I teach Latino studies, history, and culture mostly. I'm also a poet, and I would like to introduce myself via poetry. This is from my book, which is called Coatlico Eats the Apple. It is about being Mexican in New York, so that can give you a sense of a little bit what he's talking about. And this poem, well, I'll get into when I wrote this poem, but I feel like earthquakes have been important markers in my personal history, and there's just another earthquake in Mexico City, which is where my family's from. Everyone's okay, people get in contact. But that's why I'm going to read my earthquake poem. So there's two little epigraphs. It's shaking just a teensy bit. Don't be scared. Televisa reporter. Avanzo, doy un paso más. Miro de cerca el infierno. Muere el día de septiembre entre la asfixia y los gritos. Las ruinas de México. José Emilio Pacheco. Mexico City, 1985. Deep, and I'm a year old at this, in 1985. Deep in the fog emerges smutty, smoggy rides and dirt-speckled streets that seem like a glittered, speckled canvas when the warmth of a hot toddy feels like a country fire, but those Everglades are burning, the walls are crumbling, and society sleeps languidly indulged. Descending into silence, tens of thousands slept too, never awoke, choked in dust-clogged calles, mutilated beneath clouds of dust, bare hands digging at pieces of homes, at pieces of homeless. At 7:19 and 8.1 and 19.9.1985, too many numbers for too much devastation, a disaster of 3 little minutes, 180 seconds, hitting hospitals, halting hallways, retreating the jewels of technology into colonial chaos of 500,000 homeless. Violence has many faces. Living nowhere, I'm less than a year, didn't know that place. Before Colima, 22.1.2003 and 7.6. I still twirled and tumbled, spread my arms wide under 20-minute downpours until stuck screaming in a basement, the floor crumbled beneath me. Dodging glass, climbing stairs, walking out of a building, only to never walk in. It's a violent place, this indecision and stillness, receding into the quiet night. I hit mute, pause the path, so I can remember someone died to write this page. Someone died, and we forgot their name, too far away to know a grave. I can't remember his name, just the story. He walked out to work, felt the temblor, and turned to see the building behind crumble, one of the 420 buildings never to be entered again. Nustiano Carranza, Benito Juarez, Cuauhtémoc, and Madero. We remember these names in history books and school lessons, and now I write them as remnants. 50,000 damaged, bodies that can't breathe, crushed beneath iron, killed by incompetence, sacrificed in silence. The tower of Hospital Juarez, and then El Conjunto, 21 stories of steel spectacle, clearing all in its path, leading the way to the Zócalo, home to the most violent earthquake in the history of Mexico. Although that's no longer true, unfortunately. I do remember his name. 3 years later, bitter, struggling, angered, a rumbling revolution when a new Cuauhtémoc rose, a state of emergency turned state of emergence. But this is the sad part, the raw truth, the silent ending. The system went silent, cayó el sistema, and we were all in the rubble again. So yeah, I wrote this. The actual meat of this book comes from like 2011 to 2014. It was published in 2016. But the bulk of when I was writing these poems was, I did 1 semester of my PhD program at Yale, and I left. And I didn't know if I was going to come back, but I just was incredibly unhappy, felt incredibly isolated, didn't like my program or New Haven. I just fell into an incredibly deep depression. So I went home, came back to New York, sat on the couch for a while writing poems, and then I went back to work. I went to go do the only other thing that I ever was really good at, which is working in restaurants. So I've been working in restaurants since I was 16, started bussing tables and hostess, then server, then bartender, then all over New York City. So I went back to working in restaurants, and at this point I didn't even want to talk about going back to grad school. I was just like, these people, they're throwing out this language I don't understand, they're talking about these things that just don't feel relevant to me. I don't really understand what I'm doing here, what my place is in this space. Or why academia even matters. I still ask myself that sometimes. But, right, like that was and if you're a PhD student, you know this, like you're looking down 6, 7 years, probably. So it's not, it's a commitment not for the faint of heart, and that's why a lot of people actually don't finish. So I started working in restaurants, and one of the interesting things was I hadn't come back. And I think I was working in a different area or something, and I was like, when did New York City become Mexican, right? Like, I'm Mexican, all my friends are Puerto Rican, and I was always hanging out in El Barrio. I lived in El Barrio for many years. And then I'm walking down the street, and I'd gone away and come back, and 116th, there's a couple blocks that have become like Little Mexico. And I was like, oh my God. So I think I was always a friendly, open person, but I stopped, I think, maybe being a little snobby and start spending more time at like the back of the house and just talking to them. And, I wasn't really, doing much and I started talking about music and the arts and their interests and things like that. And I'm talking to one of the bartenders who's Mexican. He's like, oh, do you like hip hop? I'm like, yeah, definitely. He's like, oh, I'm an MC. I'm like, you're an MC? And again, my own personal ignorance is like coming out. I'm sharing this with you. And don't be as ignorant as me about things. So I was like, I didn't know that Mexicans did hip hop. He's like, well, actually, I'm the pioneer, but there's more now. And you should come to one of our shows. So I'm like, sure, definitely. So I go to a show, and it's just this whole other world. It's held in a tattoo shop. It's mostly young, undocumented Mexican men who are not at all the stereotype of what you think they would be. They're incredibly tatted, but also incredibly generous with their time and with making everyone feel comfortable. All the walls were lined with artwork. And there was this real sense of community, there was this real sense of family, and there was this real sense of practicing the 4 elements, which I thought was fascinating, the 4 elements of hip hop. So I hung out with them. Those became some of my good friends. Those became my tattoo artists. And then eventually I got it. I was like, okay, through writing poetry, I decided, okay, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to commute from New York. I'm going to use Yale, not let it use me, and do my work. And what I want to do, I'm going to take all that. I went back with a different mindset. And I didn't connect the dots yet then, but I think it had a lot to do with the fact that they were these people that I was working with that were in, I was a little bit feeling sorry for myself, and they were in worse positions and not feeling sorry for themselves at all. They were figuring out how to do what they wanted to do with very limited resources. And what my research, I ended up writing a lot about this in my dissertation, but what my research ended up talking about was the way in which they formed basically cooperative economies in order to support art. So they're cooperatively owned tattoo shops. There's now 3 of them. That's just one group. There's another group that, as cooperative, they put together a studio. They go about it in different ways. Some are very, Mexican communities. Some are very international in the way that they function. They have different ways of doing it. But what I will say is, tying it back to the system, is they saw the sistema. They saw the system, right? They saw New York City's capitalist system, and they were like, how can we not be a part of that? How can we be artists? Which is a whole other thing, right? No one thinks of Mexican undocumented people as artists. That's a whole other issue.
Right.
But that's a big thing for me. But they saw themselves as artists. Mm-hmm. And so they were going to figure out how to do that so that they could also still support their families, also still live the life that they wanted to live. So for me, I would say the prophetic voice is them, not so much mine, that I'm here to share.
Be leading sometimes parishes, sometimes pulpits. You can't afford to be ignorant. You just can't. You know what we have in front of us is a group of spineless cowards doing these pulpits, who are not willing to speak truth to power, who marginalize Latinos, marginalize themselves. So you've heard from a Mexican artist who happens to be a professor. You've heard from my brother Justin, who's a football player and could have done that number. He could have physicalized his salvation, instead chose education, which I think is the primary battleground for revolution. You heard from Aisha and where she's going through, and you heard from my brother, Dr. David Jefferson, who's now working in Newark to develop a whole new catechism. And by the way, you need to know these people, because when you pass them on the street, because we're going to be in a war. When we pay, you want to be able to say, like this, what's happening? And feel it.